Chapter 36 of the Hand of Fu-Manchu. This recording is in the public domain. The Hand of Fu-Manchu by Sax Rohmer. Chapter 36 The Dungeon. We were out in the corridor now, Smith showing the way with the light of his electric pocket lamp. My mind was clear enough, but I felt as weak as a child. "You look positively ghastly, old man," rapped Smith, "which is no matter for wonder. I have yet to learn how it happened that you are not lying insensible, or dead as a result of the drugged wine. When I heard someone moving in your room, it never occurred to me that it was you." "Smith," I said, "the house seems as still as death. You, Karamaneh and myself are the only occupants of the east wing. Homopoulo saw to that." "Then he—" "He is a member of the Si Fan, a creature of Dr. Fu Manchu. Yes, beyond all doubt. Sir Lionel is unfortunate, as ever, in his choice of servants. I blame my own stupidity entirely, Petrie, and I pray that my enlightenment has not come too late." "What does it all mean? What have you learnt?" "Mind these 3 steps," warned Smith, glancing back. I found my mind persistently dwelling upon the matter of that weird rapping, Petrie, and I recollected the situation of Sir Lionel's room on the southeast front. A brief inspection revealed the fact that, by means of a kindly branch of ivy, I could reach the roof of the east tower from my window. "Well?" "One may walk from there along the roof of the southeast front, and by lying face downwards at the point where it projects above the main entrance, look into Sir Lionel's room." "I saw you go." "I feared that someone was watching me, but that it was you I never supposed. Neither Barton nor his man are in that room, Petrie. They have been spirited away. This is Karamaneh's door." He grasped me by the arm, at the same time directing the light upon a closed door before which we stood. I raised my fist and beat upon the panels; then, every muscle tensed and my heart throbbing wildly, I listened for the girl's voice. Not a sound broke that deathly silence except the beating of my own heart, which I thought must surely be audible to my companion. Frantically I hurled myself against the stubborn oak, but Smith thrust me back. "Useless, Petrie," he said, "useless. This room is in the base of the east tower. Yours is above it and mine at the top. The corridors approaching the 3 floors deceive one, but the fact remains. I have no positive evidence, but I would wager all I possess that there is a stair in the thickness of the wall, and hidden doors in the panelling of the 3 apartments. The Yellow group has somehow obtained possession of a plan of the historic secret passages and chambers of Graywater Park. Homopoulo is the spy in the household, and Sir Lionel, with his man Kennedy, was removed directly the invitation to us had been posted. The group will know by now that we have escaped them, that Karamaneh—" "Smith!" I groaned. "Smith, what can we do? What has befallen her?" "This way," he snapped. "We are not beaten yet." "We must arouse the servants." "Why? It would be a sheer waste of precious time. There are only 3 men who actually sleep in the house, excepting Homopoulo, and these are in the northwest wing. No, Petrie, we must rely upon ourselves." He was racing recklessly along the tortuous corridors and up the oddly placed stairways of that old world building. My anguish had reinforced the atropine which I had employed as an antidote to the opiate in the wine, and now my blood, that had coursed sluggishly, leapt through my veins like fire, and I burned with a passionate anger. Into a large and untidy bedroom we burst. Books and papers littered about the floor. Curios, ranging from mummied cats and ibises to Turkish yatigans and Zulu assegais, surrounded the place in riotous disorder. Beyond doubt this was the apartment of Sir Lionel Barton. A lamp burned upon a table near to the disordered bed, and a discoloured Greek statuette of Orpheus lay overturned on the carpet close beside it. "Homopoulo was on the point of leaving this room at the moment that I peered in at the window," said Smith, breathing heavily. "From here there is another entrance to the secret passages. Have your pistol ready." He stepped across the disordered room to a little alcove near the foot of the bed, directing the ray of the pocket lamp upon the small square panelling. "Ah!" he cried, a note of triumph in his voice. "He has left the door ajar. A visit of inspection was not anticipated to night, Petrie. Thank God for an Indian liver and a suspicious mind." He disappeared into a yawning cavity which now I perceived to exist in the wall. I hurried after him, and found myself upon roughly fashioned stone steps in a very low and narrow descending passage. Over his shoulder— "Note the direction," said Smith breathlessly. We shall presently find ourselves at the base of the east tower." Down we went, and down, the ray of the electric lamp always showing more steps ahead, until at last these terminated in a level, arched passage, curving sharply to the right. 2 paces more brought us to a doorway, less than 4 feet high, approached by 2 wide steps. A blackened door, having a most cumbersome and complicated lock, showed in the recess. Nayland Smith bent and examined the mechanism intently. "Freshly oiled," he commented. "You know into whose room it opens?" Well enough I knew, and detecting that faint, haunting perfume which spoke of the dainty personality of Karamaneh, my anger blazed up anew. Came a faint sound of metal grating upon metal, and Smith pulled open the door, which turned outward upon the steps, and bent further forward, sweeping the ray of light about the room beyond. "Empty, of course," he muttered. "Now for the base of these damned nocturnal operations." He descended the steps and began to flash the light all about the arched passageway wherein we stood. "The present dining room of Graywater Park lies almost due south of this spot," he mused. "Suppose we try back." We retraced our steps to the foot of the stair. In the wall on their left was an opening, low down against the floor and little more than 3 feet high. It reminded me of some of the entrances to those seemingly interminable passages whereby one approaches the sepulchral chambers of the Egyptian pyramids. "Now for it!" snapped Smith. "Follow me closely." Down he dropped, and having the lamp thrust out before him, began to crawl into the tunnel. As his heels disappeared, and only a faint light outlined the opening, I dropped upon all fours in turn, and began laboriously to drag myself along behind him. The atmosphere was damp, chilly, and evil smelling. Therefore, at the end of some 10 or 12 yards of this serpentine crawling, when I saw Smith ahead of me to be standing erect, I uttered a stifled exclamation of relief. The thought of Karamaneh having been dragged through this noisome hole was one I dared not dwell upon. A long, narrow passage now opened up, its end invisible from where we stood. Smith hurried forward. For the first 30 or 40 paces the roof was formed of massive stone slabs, then its character changed. The passage became lower, and one was compelled frequently to lower the head in order to avoid the oaken beams which crossed it. "We are passing under the dining room," said Smith. "It was from here the sound of beating first came." "What do you mean?" "I have built up a theory which remains to be proved, Petrie. In my opinion a captive of the Yellow group escaped to-night and sought to summon assistance, but was discovered and overpowered." "Sir Lionel?" "Sir Lionel, or Kennedy; yes, I believe so. Enlightenment came to me. I understood the pitiable condition into which the Greek butler had been thrown by the phenomenon of the ghostly knocking." But Smith hurried on, and suddenly I saw that the passage had entered upon a sharp declivity, and now both roof and walls were composed of crumbling brickwork. Smith pulled up and thrust back a hand to detain me. "Sh!" he hissed, and grasped my arm. Silent, intently still, we stood and listened. The sound of a guttural voice was clearly distinguishable from somewhere close at hand. Smith extinguished the lamp. A faint luminance proclaimed itself directly ahead. Still grasping my arm, Smith began slowly to advance toward the light. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 paces we crept onward, and I found myself looking through an archway into a medieval torture chamber. Only a part of the place was visible to me, but its character was unmistakable. Leg irons, boots, and thumbscrews hung in racks upon the fungi-covered wall. A massive iron-studded door was open at the further end of the chamber, and on the threshold stood Homopoulo, holding a lantern in his hand. Even as I saw him he stepped through, followed by one of those short, thick-set Burmans of whom Dr. Fu-Manchu had a number among his entourage. They were members of the villainous robber bands notorious in India as the dacoits. Over one broad shoulder, slung sack-wise, the dacoit carried a girl clad in scanty white drapery. Madness seized me, the madness of sorrow and impotent wrath, for with Karamaneh being borne off before my eyes, I dared not fire at her abductors, lest I should strike her. Nayland Smith uttered a loud cry, and together we hurled ourselves into the chamber. Heedless of what, of whom, else it might shelter, we sprang for the group in the distant doorway. A memory is mine of the dark, white face of Homopoulo peering wild-eyed over the lantern. of the slim, white clad form of the lovely captive.